Shamrock, the linear tactical series. Written by Janie Crouch. Narrated by Tom Campbell.
Chapter 1. Violet Collingwood had thought the tiny, windowless room where her kidnappers had held her for the past 3 days was the worst place she could possibly be. She'd been so very wrong. In that room, there'd been little light and just a hole in the ground for a toilet. The only way she'd known how much time had passed was by the arrival of meals twice a day, a couple of protein bars and some water. Sitting in the dark by herself for hours, not knowing if she was going to live or die, had given her a lot of time to reflect on how she'd gotten there, what she could have done, should have done. 2 men had grabbed her as she'd walked from her evening class to the parking area across campus. She'd almost been to her car in the garage when they'd pulled up. She should have been more aware. Her brother, Gabe, was always telling her she needed to be more aware of what was going on around her. She'd always thought he was just paranoid, that his time as a Navy SEAL had made him hyper-aware of danger. But being hyper-aware was better than being kidnapped and held in a dark, airless room somewhere. Were they holding her for ransom, hoping her brother would pay money for her return, since he was CEO of Collingwood Technology? Maybe they didn't know that Gabe put almost every dollar they had back into the company. He didn't have a lot of liquid assets. He would do anything he could to get her back, but if they were asking for millions of dollars, Gabe didn't have that sort of money. At least, not if they expected him to be able to get to it quickly. She'd kept her ear to the door, literally, since being shoved in the room, sometimes able to catch the sound of conversation. When it was quiet, she'd nearly dislocated her shoulder trying to break through the door, and she'd bloodied her fingertips trying to feel for any cracks in the wall that would suggest some sort of structural weakness. She was putting those chemical engineering classes she'd been taking for the past 3 years to a use she had never expected. The effort kept her from giving in to terror and despondency. There was nothing more in the world she wanted than to get out of that dark room. Or so she'd thought. But that was before they'd stripped her naked and put her in a cage. Now she'd give anything to be back in that dark room. At least there, no one had paid attention to her. There had been some big argument outside the door, men yelling at each other. She'd strained to pick out any words. A Mr. Stellman was mentioned repeatedly, but she had no idea who that was. Death, kill, and money were also mentioned, as well as every variation she'd ever heard of the F word. Nothing at all about that screaming match had made her feel any better, even when she'd heard a door slam. The door to her room had opened a few moments later. The light streaming in had momentarily blinded her, causing her to fall hard to the ground, and she tried to scurry backward. A man, tall and beefy, with blonde hair that fell over one eye, was on her in just a few steps, despite her attempt to get away. He reached down and grabbed her hair in his fist, dragging her back to a standing position. "Maybe we're not allowed to taste you for ourselves, but that doesn't mean you can't make us some money." His voice was breathy, excited. "What?" she whispered. "Take off your clothes. It's time for you to earn your keep around here like everyone else." Violet didn't know what he was talking about, but she sure as hell wasn't going to take off her clothes. The door was wide open for the first time in days, so she made a run for it. She threw all her weight at the guy, who lost his grip on her. But she was barely halfway to the door before he tackled her to the ground. "I don't think so." His breath was hot in her ear as he laughed. Violet squirmed to try to get away again. His hips thrust up against her. He was definitely turned on. She stopped moving and just lay flat on the floor. She didn't want to rub up against him any more than she had to. "Aw, come on. Don't stop all your wiggling on my account." His hand reached between them and grabbed her buttocks, squeezing and kneading roughly. Violet whimpered before swallowing the sound. She didn't want to show him any weakness. But tears leaked out of her eyes as he ground himself against her and yanked her head up by her hair so he could slide his other
Sample complete. Ready to continue?